joining us today. My name is Amber Falgo, and I am the Northern Nevada manager with Battleborn Progress. I'm excited to be here today with an incredible group of individuals who will be discussing access to abortion care and the challenges that we are currently facing. I will kick us off briefly with my abortion story. So about 6 years ago, I was in a relationship that was not particularly healthy. It had evidence of small abuse, and I was on birth control. I became pregnant, and at that time, the abuse became a little bit more pronounced. I knew at that time that it was not the right situation for me to be having another child in. I currently, at that time, I think my oldest was 7 or 8. And I did not have a particularly high paying job. I struggled to pay rent. I struggled to afford food, even though I worked full time. And I was forced into a situation where I needed to make a choice about what was best for myself, what was best for my existing child. And I chose to have an abortion. I am grateful that I was able to have that choice because it allowed me to be a better mother to the child that I already had. And in addition to that, it was a struggle, evidenced by how expensive abortion is, especially up here in Northern Nevada. Access is limited. There's 1 or 2 providers at best, and that is just depending on various things that are happening within the community and with providers. So it was incredibly challenging to find access and also challenging to pay for it. At the time of my abortion, my rent was $1,200 a month, and the abortion cost about $800. At that time, my first check covered just my rent. I got paid twice a month. So that type of struggle is evident across our state and across the many, many people who seek this service. So part of why I came forward with my story is because I wanted to talk about that, especially within the existing political spectrum that we have right now. In my recent op-ed concerning Cindy Carano, I spoke a lot about how lower class individuals do not have access. And while abortion may be viewed as safe here for now, that does not mean that it is accessible to all who need that service. So I am very excited to be here and to kick off this panel today. I would like to get to one of our speakers right now. His name is Dr. Adam Levy. He is currently a provider, and I want him to talk to you all about what that experience is and how that's going to look moving forward. Dr. Levy, over to you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Adam Levy, and I'm here to speak up and let you know that abortion, specifically pregnancy termination, is a necessary procedure, and it should be accessible, available to all those who need it. As an abortion provider, I've seen many women and family, even with desired pregnancies, who need to have pregnancy terminations due to heart conditions, severe medical conditions, fetuses missing vital organs, or other major health conditions. These are heart-wrenching situations. And creating a restrictive environment based on certain religious values is simply un-American, and it's an infringement on basic human rights and personal autonomy. This election cycle, unfortunately, is crucial in determining how pregnancy termination will be regulated for many years to come. Certain politicians want to use this issue to divide us and fuel un-American so-called culture wars that are destructive and negatively impact the health and well-being of many women and families. Since the Dobbs decision, providers, including me, are seeing an influx in abortion patients. This has put stress on our clinics and staff who work diligently every day to provide this necessary service. Further restrictions will only cause more need here in Nevada. They will also damage many women and families and further restrict basic human rights, personal self-determination of more people in our country. So I cannot speak more strongly that this is really a very unfortunate time that for American women to be facing, and so unnecessary.
Thank you, Dr. Levy. Next, I want to go to Lindsay Harmon, the Executive Director of Planned Parenthood Votes. And Lindsay, talk to us about your thoughts on this important issue. I know this is something you all work a lot on, and we would love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, so I think what we've seen recently, in particular as it relates to the debate that we all watched between Governor Sisolak and Sheriff Lombardo, is that a lot of these candidates now are backtracking their record and their position on this issue, mostly because we know that in the state of Nevada, this polls incredibly high and is proving to be an critical issue on the ballot. And so I think it's important that we start to clarify some issues around abortion. And I think that the governor did some of that in the debate. You look at someone like Sheriff Lombardo, who comes out and says, he is for parental notification. And I think what that touches on is a lot of things that can happen in a state like Nevada, where we are chipping away at and restricting access outside of the statutory protection from 1990. So while it's true that abortion is protected in state statute, there are a lot of other things that certainly a governor or in Adam Laxalt's case, a senator can work to actively restrict access in a state like Nevada. So that, whether in a governor's role, that's certainly on the regulatory level. That relates to restrictions for providers like Dr. Levy, or restrictions around clinics, restrictions around pharmacy issues. So there's a lot of ways to get around this. So I think it's really critically important that we recognize that this is put in statute, but that there's also a lot of risk that goes along with electing someone who is anti-abortion. So to touch on that, I think what we need to start doing is looking at those kind of broader implications here. So what does it mean to be a champion in our state? And I think that, with Governor Sisolak's executive order, he's really exemplifying that. He's really showing, the state's role in abortion care. And beyond that, if we look at the federal issues as we're talking about this, I think it's critically important that we look like, Senator Graham has just proposed this federal ban, and has stated very clearly that if he takes over, they win the Senate, there will be a vote on this ban. And I think, we cannot count on politicians to carry the Nevada state line on this. We saw this with Brett Kavanaugh. We saw this with Amy Coney Barrett. These are folks that go in saying that they're going to protect access, or saying that they're going to protect precedent, saying they're going to protect Roe, and then they go in and overturn that anyway. And, I don't think that anyone can be beholden onto what politicians are saying in state. And I think if you're an issue voter, and you care about abortion, then the choices are clear here. We're going to vote for Governor Sisolak, and we're going to vote for Senator Catherine Cortez Masto. And there's a clear choice there. I think some other things, we can talk about too, our folks' record, right? We don't want to allow these politicians to backtrack from the things they've said. In 2018, Laxalt said he would look into rules changing the statutory protection, probably at the time because he didn't know that abortion was statutorily protected, which is alarming all in itself. But certainly, we'll carry on that track record as, a candidate for the Senate. So just to clarify, there are a lot of other ways to restrict abortion access outside of those statutory protections. And I think it's also critically important that we recognize the work of those people in 1990, the tireless work of those advocates to get that ballot measure passed. And it's egregious that candidates today would be hiding behind that work now. And so let's just make sure that we hold people to their record. We recognize that abortion is widely popular in a state like Nevada, in that, it polls high, it's an important issue for voters. And so now we have to hold those candidates to the things they said, either prior to it being the issue it is now, or prior to the general election. So let's do that and recognize that we have some serious champions in Governor Sisolak and in Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, and let's get them elected to office. And that's, I think, the most important part.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, Lindsay. Thank you so much for that background and then for your words. I think those are all really important points as we head into November, and I couldn't agree more. Next, I want to go to Yvette Machado. She is an organizer with Somos PAC. Yvette, take it away.
Sorry, thank you, Amber. Can you hear me okay? Thank you. Good morning. My name is Yvette Machado Tenier, and I'm a community organizer for Somos PAC. Somos is a Latina-led organization focused on persuading and mobilizing Latino voters. And I'm here today to share a little bit about my story and then the work that we do with Somos. Women's rights, the right to privacy, and life-saving access to healthcare is currently under threat across the nation, which we all know, and our lives are at risk. We can't place our well-being into the hands of anyone that is not 100% certain that we deserve body autonomy. Safe access to abortion has helped my entire family. I'm a mother of 3 children. I have 2 daughters and a son, and I feel extremely blessed to be a mom now more than ever, because when I was a teenager, I got pregnant. And even though I was not prepared to be a mother, I was really excited at the idea of becoming a mom. And my family was as supportive as they could be. And when I went to my first set of prenatal appointments, I was eager and I was excited. To give a little bit of backstory, I grew up here in Nevada, and I admit that reproductive health care is not taught in terms of developmental health care for women. Sex ed, as they call it, is very one-sided, and it's taught more of as a set of consequences. And girls are taught that sex happens to you and not about being participants in a healthy sexual relationship. There's a lot of disparities in even talking about women's health. I'll save that for a different conversation. But my point is that as a teenager, I had no idea how many medical complications could come from pregnancy. I saw pregnancy as something that could be scary if you were young, mainly because of lost opportunities, but not because of the dire effects it could have on your body. And it wasn't until my own life was at risk with an unviable pregnancy that my eyes were open for the first time. The scariest part of being pregnant so young was telling my family, but after I did that, I felt safe to be excited. And I remember being at my doctor's office for my 12-week appointment, feeling relieved because I had just learned that reaching 12 weeks meant that women were in the safe zone for their pregnancy and had a higher chance of having a healthy delivery. Also, that was the appointment where I would finally get an ultrasound. So as I was there, the sonographer was conducting the ultrasound, and I hear the heartbeat, and it's thrilling, really. I remember wishing that my mom was there, but she was working at the time, so I was by myself. After hearing the heartbeat and staring at that little monitor, trying to make sense of what I was looking at, I saw the nurse stop, and she looked at me in a way that I can't describe with words, but I'll never forget it, and told me she'd be right back. A few moments later, the doctor came in and told me that I'd need to be transported to the surgical center right away to remove the embryo from my body. And the doctor started to explain to me that the embryo was lodged in one of my fallopian tubes. I didn't even know what a fallopian tube really was at that point, and what it meant. I was confused, and I just kept saying, but I heard the heartbeat, as if that meant that the doctor was making a mistake. I was a teenager. I was alone and scared, and the doctor and the staff that saved my life, they made me feel comforted. They reminded me that this was not my fault, but also that there was nothing that could be done to save the pregnancy, and they spoke hope into my heart. Later, I learned what had happened to me is something that happens in 1 of every 5 pregnancies. It's called an ectopic pregnancy. No matter the case or circumstance, ectopic pregnancies are never viable, meaning there's no possible host for the baby to grow, so it will die. And if the embryo is not removed from the mother will die. And that day I learned how lucky I was to be alive that far along in a pregnancy with an embryo lodged into my fallopian tube, which was right about to burst. If the medical staff had waited any moment longer, to provide me an emergency abortion, my fallopian tube would have burst and I would have died. Thankfully, the doctor was able to treat me with life-saving medical care with no questions asked, to remove my fallopian tube and the embryo. And they did it in time to salvage the rest of my reproductive organs to ensure that I'd have a fair chance to be a mom in the future. And I'm grateful every single day that my doctor never had to second guess what they were risking to save my life. Telling my story is extremely difficult because it stirs up so many emotions, especially being a mom now. There's a lot of highs and lows, but it's important to share because I realize how many people, including myself, are simply uneducated on what it means to have the right to an abortion, the right to health care, the right to privacy. And although people who can become pregnant have no other choice but to understand what's at risk, women face the struggle of having to share these intimate, painstaking personal experiences with the world in order to receive empathy and validity just for our right to have body autonomy. It's worth it for me to put myself through this experience and talk openly because I know there's an impact that will be made. I know educating folks and being a representation of something bigger than myself is important, but I choose to do this. I do feel that women and our rights deserve to be validated without having to go through the risks of putting ourselves out there. But I appreciate having the opportunity to come here and share my story because I hope one day my story is not a reason that we need something. I want it to be an example of a successful system. And all of my experiences have really led me into my work that I'm doing now, which is mobilizing communities, in particular the Latino community. And my work with Somos really focuses on Latinas and our investment here in Nevada. Women are bringing Nevada back. Our hard work should result in more opportunities and not less. And that's what we continue to hear from Latina voters at the door and at our community events. Trump endorsed Republican candidates like Adam Laxalt and Joe Lombardo are really out of step with everyday Nevadans, especially Latinas. Their extreme political beliefs and dangerous plans honestly makes them a harm to women, our families, communities, and our economy. Make no mistake, they want to use every tactic, big or small, loud or silent, within their authority or not, to chip away and take away our personal liberties and rights. We deserve leaders like La Senadora Catherine Cortez Masto and El Gobernador Steve Sisolak, who will protect our right to a safe abortion while continuing to prioritize what matters most, fighting to make sure that hardworking people like us have the tools and the opportunities that we need to keep Nevada going and build a better life for ourselves and our families. I'm really proud to say that Somos has already knocked on over 360,000 doors, is having one-on-one conversations with voters. And we're going to continue working to ensure that every Latino and Latina across the state, especially Latina voters, know where Lombardo and Laxalt stand despite their backpedaling, and understand what's at stake in November and elect real leaders who will look out for people like us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yvette. That was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that story. It is so impactful and so powerful to hear how abortion can save lives, quite frankly. That is just truly amazing. Next, and finally, I want to go to Amy Koo with OneAPIA. After Amy speaks, we will then open it up for press questions. So get ready for those. Amy, go for it.
Hi, thank you so much, Amber, and hello everyone. My name is Amy Koo, and I'm the political director with OneAPIA in Nevada. We work with the Asian and Pacific Islander community here in Nevada. We know that the risks that we face are not just figments of our imagination. In 2021 alone, there have been 561 restrictions nationwide on abortion access introduced at the state level that would make it harder for pregnant people to seek the care that they need. We're lucky that Much work has been done at the state level in Nevada to codify abortion access, ensuring that Nevadans still have access to abortion up to 24 weeks. However, this is not guaranteed. And if we don't elect leaders that unequivocally support access to abortion, the impact could be devastating to communities of color. We recognize that when we talk about abortion, we often overlook the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities, but this is an issue that directly harms AA and HPI communities and their families. Our community already faces great barriers when it comes to accessing much needed healthcare services due to cultural and familial stigma, with lack of language access and lack of insurance. The pandemic only further underscored the bleak reality. AA and HPIs, especially women, are overrepresented in the frontline and low-wage workforce, including the retail, restaurant, and personal care industries. Yet most of these frontline jobs fail to provide health coverage, family, or sick leave, making it nearly impossible for someone to save money and be able to take time off to even get an abortion. 35% of pregnancies end in abortion for AA and HPI women, the second highest percentage among all demographic groups. And 7 in 10 Asian Americans support the legalization of abortion. And 85% of AAPI women believe in the right to make their own decisions that are best for their lives and their bodies. Abortion providers in Nevada, specifically in Las Vegas, are seeing an influx in abortion patients from out of state seeking care. Planned Parenthood of the Rocky Mountains health centers have said that since the SCOTUS decision, about half the patients seeking abortions at their health centers are currently coming out of state. And while all patients have been able to access care, that means that wait times are increasing, and that trend is likely to continue. Almost no national data exists on AAPI abortion rates. The numbers I just shared are studies that were hosted by national partners of ours, but even at the federal level, at the federal government level, oftentimes we're categorized as other, and it'll likely be years until we know the full impact that abortion bans are going to have on health disparities in Asian, Black, Indigenous, and Latinx communities across the country, and low-income communities who are unable to travel to seek care. These bans are primarily about power and control, and we wholeheartedly believe that all people should have complete control over their own personal decisions and make those decisions with their healthcare providers. And according to recent polls, 9 out of 10 Nevadans agree. We should be able to make the decisions about pregnancy and abortion free from fear, and we should be trusted to make the decisions that are best for our lives and our bodies. We are not your minority, and we will make our voices loud and clear at the ballot box in the upcoming midterm elections and for every election to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amy. That was wonderful. And I just want to close us out and thank all of our speakers for joining us. And then let's go to press questions. For any press that is on, if you want to either raise your hand or just come off mute, please feel free to do so now. First, I'm seeing Ben. Let's go to Ben.
Hi, this is Ben Marjot with Channel 4 in Reno. The question is for, I guess, whoever wants to take it, that might be best to answer, but the parental notification was listed as one specific example that a governor, for example, could move to maybe restrict abortion rights. If someone could just list maybe all of the different ways that a governor, with current Nevada law in place on the 24 weeks, could still chip away at protections. What are some other examples?
Amber, is that me?
Yep, I was.
Yeah, so I think the other ways to do this, right, are to one, make it difficult for providers to provide care in state, whether that means bringing in providers who are currently providing abortions in other states, coming here and making the licensure harder, or putting restrictions on board providers. You've heard, mandatory wait times, ultrasound requirements. In other states, for example, they have made providers repeat medically inaccurate information to patients. So there's a lot of things you can do around the provider in the provider area. There's also rules you could make in the pharmacy, through the pharmacy board or through pharmacy regulations related to dispensing of MABs and the abortion pill. You could, put restrictions on health centers as far as like hallway size or proximity to hospitals, or requiring providers to have, reciprocal agreements with hospitals. So there's a lot of different ways that maybe people aren't always top of mind, that certainly would restrict access and or make it more difficult for providers to come in and give that care. It's really these things that affect operations and affect the bottom line, for providers, as they're just trying to provide healthcare to patients. I don't know if Dr. Levy has additional items to add to that, but that is certainly a small suite in the number of options that these folks have been known to pursue.
And I'll just add to what Lindsay was saying, definitely double downing on the kinds of regulations that can be put in place to restrict and make the trail of a patient getting services that she needs and wants very troublesome, whether that be these ridiculous scripts, parental notifications that have already been ruled in Nevada to be unconstitutional in the past. But there's numerous regulations, and also the regulatory bodies that come into abortion clinics and certify them for sedation, for example. Those can be politically manipulated to make it nearly impossible to be certified. So there's just all sorts of levels besides laws, regulations, requirements, and all sorts of barriers and stumbling blocks and hurdles for both providers and patients to overcome in order to get the services that they want.
And since we're with Dr. Levy or Levy, excuse me, just a quick follow-up. Are you a doctor in Northern Nevada? And then did I hear you say that you're seeing an influx in abortion patients right now? Is that true? And if so, is that from out-of-state people? And then if so, I'm wondering where.
So I am a provider in Southern Nevada, in Las Vegas. And we are seeing an influx of patients from Arizona and as far as Florida and the Carolinas. These are patients, though, with means of being able to travel here and stay here for prolonged times, depending on the gestational age. So we're seeing people from all over the country, but in particular, Arizona.
Thank you so much, Dr. Levy and Lindsay, and also Ben, for those good questions. Next, let's go to Lucia.
Hi, this is Lucia Starbuck with KUNR Public Radio. I'm curious, following the governor debate on Sunday, with Lombardo saying like he's not going, with him saying he's not going to repeal the CISLAC's executive order, he's not going to chip away at legislation. I guess, does that give you guys any relief at all?
Well, I was at the debate personally, and I can tell you this. I don't trust that statement as far as I can throw him. It is absolutely ridiculous to think that an anti-choice individual would actually keep his promise. He might keep that particular promise, but he has lots of other ammunition where he can chip away at our ability to provide and patients' ability to access abortion services. Sorry, I stepped in there fast.
No, you're good.
Anybody else?
I would add to that, Lucia. I think that this is not a new tactic, right? We saw this with Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett, right? They went in front of the Senate. They testified that Roe was precedent and that they, had no intention of hearing the case. And then as soon as they get into those positions of power, that rhetoric changes and they find ways of talking their way out of it, right? So I think we're at a point as a society and folks who are, pro-abortion and pro-women's health, that we cannot take that line for granted. It is not something that we are going to believe. It is not something we are going to stand behind. I certainly don't sleep any better at night knowing that Sheriff Lombardo has said, that he will not chip away at abortion care. I don't believe it. I think there's a lot of ways to get around it. I also think there's a lot of things that that he can do outside of that, that maybe wouldn't be noticed by the public or wouldn't be noticed by the legislature, that we've just, briefly touched on here. So.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Do you have any follow-ups?
No, I don't. Thank you, though.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I also see a question in the chat, so I will go to that now, and then I will come back around for another round of questions if anybody else wants to ask them. There is a question from Yvette Fernandez. Hopefully I am saying that name right. If not, I apologize. Regarding Senator Lindsey Graham's proposed federal ban, can you clarify, would this supersede state law, specifically Nevada's status? I'm not sure who wants to take that, but Lindsey, if you want to start with your thoughts, and then Dr. Levy.
Sure. So I think that we're really testing a lot of these abortion bans right now, right? States are trying to impose rules and they are going back to the courts. I do think, a federal ban going into place has every potential to supersede that. Will there be some court cases in the interim that may or may not decide that? That is absolutely the truth. But I think what we're seeing now is that when the Supreme Court made the decision to overturn Roe, what they were saying was, it's all fair game. They didn't just put it out to the states. Really, they were hiding this intentional agenda to take back control and power over people's bodies. And so I see, and we know that at every level of the courts, there have been these conservative, ideological, evangelical judges that have been appointed. And we know that that is a systemic and deliberate decision to affect every single one of these rulings. So a federal ban is incredibly dangerous. And there is zero chance that Adam Laxalt would not vote for it. And knowing that, we have to really instill every level of protection we can. And we have to make Congress act on this issue, because it is the people in this country and in this state really do care about this, and it is incredibly important. And they know that abortion is a critical part of a person's health care. And so as we move towards that, I think we need to, it's not just about this federal ban, right? It's a systemic decision to put judges at every level. But I do think that a federal ban could absolutely supersede rules here in Nevada, especially knowing that the makeup of the courts and kind of this very deliberate decision on behalf of Donald Trump and the that electoral base to really go after abortion. So.
Thank you so much, Lindsey. Dr. Levy, do you have anything to add on that question about Senator Graham's proposed federal ban?
Well, it's just another way that the Republicans and just want to control women's health and women's health care. It's just another absurd attempt at trying to just double down on what the Supreme Court's already knocked down. And, this whole rhetoric of, it's state rights that the Republicans come up with, and then they put this forward. It's just another example of how you cannot, A, believe what they say, B, trust what they say that they're actually going to do, or C, endorse any kind of compromise. There's just nothing there except the desire to impede, control, and return to some bygone era that doesn't exist in the first place. And maybe just a feeble political attempt to stir the pot. I don't know. But all I know is that any kind of effort like that simply just prevents women from being able to exercise their autonomy over their own bodies. And that simply is just not acceptable to me. It's, in my opinion, it's completely un-American and completely contrary to the basic precepts of rights in general. And that's what I view this as an attack on our personal rights. And they're singling out women to do this. And it's just not right.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Levy. I will go do one more round. If any press on has any questions, please hop in, raise your hand, or put them in the chat. I'll give you all just a few seconds to do that, and then we will close out.
Just real quick, this is Ben again. Is the fear essentially that if, for example, Joe Lombardo is elected, that he would, pass some of these things, parental notification, all these different ways that have been mentioned, to kind of gum up the works to where there are fewer providers that can do less services, and it kind of, in essence, still grinds abortions to a halt here? Is that kind of the concern?
Yeah, so I'll take this question. I think it's both a fear and recognizing Nevada's role in the national landscape, right? We aren't just a state where folks can come in to provide care. We're also a state that's been on the front line of this issue for a long time. We're a proactive state in every way that we possibly can be. So having someone in there that stalls that progression and also could potentially influence these regulatory bodies and other issues, it's both a fear and like a disappointment. I'll say that we know, for all the things that Lombardo has said in the debates and on record, which has been very confusing and back and forth, I can say this. He's been endorsed by the Right to Life folks, and you have to earn those endorsements, just like Laxalt has, right? These are endorsements that you have to earn, and you have to answer very serious questions about your stances on abortion. So look towards those endorsements. The other part of that too is that I'd like to touch on is that, recently Sheriff Lombardo donated Metro rides to crisis pregnancy centers to have them auctioned off. These actions and these kind of behind the scenes behaviors are clearly align these folks with anti-abortion groups. And so I would say that it's both a fear that someone could come in, be elected, and undo the hard work of Nevadans to kind of protect and advance abortion access, but also to stall us, from being that proactive state and for advancing issues around women's health and around pregnant people's health, and really serving people in a way that is meaningful. So those are, I think, the fears that come to mind when we talk about this issue.
Thank you.
Oh, no, go for it. Yes, you're welcome, Ben. If anybody else wants to speak to any of that on the panel, feel free.
Well, I definitely, I'm totally behind what Lindsay is saying. And these crisis pregnancy centers are really a troublesome issue. I don't know if much of the media really pays attention to this, but I have numerous patients coming into my office in absolute emotional distress after having been lured into one of these facilities, one of which is actually on the private driveway with me at Birth Control Care Center. So, I mean, I have intimate knowledge about how these centers damage people emotionally and put them through traumatic experiences, just based on their narrow religious values. And I guess the other thing I have to say is that I really take issue with individuals labeling this anti-abortion movement as pro-life. In my opinion, I'm pro-life. I'm pro-woman. I'm for the woman's life. That is the living individual. And labeling individuals as pro-life and anti-abortion is an anachronism, I think, because they're not pro-life. They're anti-woman, anti-choice, and simply just anti-life, because the woman is the one living. And so I'm sorry, I get on this soapbox, but this really bothers me because as a physician, I'm promoting life. I'm promoting the woman's life, the one who's living and breathing. And so, sorry, that's a little bit of a tangent, but I just need to throw that out there because I constantly am annoyed and aggravated by the fact that people label the anti-abortion movement as pro-life when it's really not.
Thank you for that, Dr. Levy. We also have a question from Yvette Hernandez, again in the chat, that I will ask right now. What kind of outreach have you seen from
recording stopped
abortion rights groups targeting certain groups culturally? So this is about anti-abortion groups targeting specific cultural sects within our community. Amy or Yvette, do you want to talk about if you all have seen any abortion rights groups reach out to specific communities?
I can make a comment on that. Yvette Machado Tanier here with Somos PAC. Honestly, from knocking on all the doors and canvassing and our efforts being out in the community, I'm uncertain if there are anti-abortion groups out there targeting these communities, but being part of an organization that helps uplift these communities, what we are hearing is that, at least in the Latino communities, there is no tolerance for that. So abortion has moved up to the third most important topic in the Latino communities as far as what's going to drive our vote. So if they're out there, they're doing an awful job or they're doing a great job, in my opinion, because they're not, reaching the voters and spreading misinformation. Because when we are out there, we find that there's a lot of families that are informed, but they're scared. So I haven't seen any anti-abortion tactics, but yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I can also speak a little bit to that as well. For us, I think the thing that we are starting to see is that people are starting to reach out in language to try to talk to people about these different issues and things like that. I'm sure that working with other communities that speak different languages, you see that as well. And so people are really trying to circumvent the conversation, because a lot of times misinformation in language is hard to combat, because the people who need to fight against that misinformation or disinformation are people who can combat back in language. So a lot of times, the things that we're seeing are not necessarily targeted attacks, but just folks who are trying to use in language outreach to confuse voters or misrepresent things to voters and things like that. So definitely is a fear of just for our limited English proficient communities to get the correct information about the laws that we have on the books in Nevada, and also making sure that they know their rights when accessing care, because I think everyone mentioned, it's very easy to find something on the internet that you might think is healthcare and then realize when you get there that it isn't. So especially for our limited English proficient communities, it's important that we're providing correct information in language. So that's something that we're definitely seeing.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, so I will do one final round. If any press has any additional questions, please say so now, and then we will close out.
I have a question, Kay with News 3. Amy, I'm wondering if you can give some examples of some things that you're seeing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of targeted outreach to voters right now in language. So there's just an inundation of language. For us in the API community specifically, it's mostly just community members who are trying to provide information to other community members or to family members. So there's a lot of information being spread on WeChat and WhatsApp. So more just generally through group chats and things like that, within the community and things like that. I can't provide a specific example of something that someone has paid for to target in language community members, but there is in language community articles that are being spread in different group chats. I don't know if anyone else has anything else that they can add.
Go for it.
Thank you. So Amy, just going off of what you said, and thank you for sharing that, but yes, language is absolutely a way that these extreme politicians are looking to target vulnerable communities by kind of infiltrating. And what we've seen a lot is with people like Adam Laxalt, is they're targeting the Latino communities with ads through social media, paid ads, misinformation in our language, so in Spanish, and trying to really get a support system based on the information that they're giving. But Somos is working to empower the Latino community with the correct information so that at least our communities across the board can recognize allies for being allies, and they can recognize when people are just trying to find some commonality in order to exploit something or get something from you. So I think Somos is doing a great job in empowering people to recognize these tactics, but it is something that I've seen personally, through social media with politicians like Adam Laxalt having Spanish ad campaigns and trying to pretend like they're in our communities.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, I think that is all of the questions. This has been a wonderful press conference, and I appreciate all of the support with press, and then also all of the folks that we have had on to talk about their stories. These are deeply personal issues, and I appreciate each and every one of you for joining us today and for talking about your work and or your abortion stories. Thank you all so much. Bye, y'all.